we can't tell somebody if their thought is right or wrong. I mean, it's just like, let's hear what you think. And then we can teach them to back it up with facts or how to search for relevant facts. So I think that's the first thing, is just when we're doing assignments or doing things in our homeschool, to not necessarily have those right and wrong things. Just have those things where it's like, tell me what you think. Give me your insights. What have we learned about? Make them connect the dots on some things. Like, what have we learned in homeschool that applies to this situation?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschool journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. If this podcast has been encouraging to you, please leave us a good review. Each review really helps. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We post a lot of content there. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Cindy Briggs. You don't want to miss a minute of this episode. Cindy holds a PhD in organizational leadership along with 2 master's degrees. What does this have to do with homeschooling, you might be asking? After serving as a college professor for over 25 years, Cindy left the teaching profession to become a homeschool mom. Her passion for learning, her dedication to her family, and her support of homeschooling organizations will inspire you. So stay tuned. I think you will really be encouraged.
When my family started our homeschooling journey, there were so many decisions to make. But one of our best decisions was choosing to use BJU Press Homeschool. I've never seen my kids so excited to get textbooks before. I'm amazed by how interesting and interactive the lessons are. My kids actually look forward to them. We use the online video lessons for all our courses, but I know some families choose to teach from the textbooks. What I love is that I can trust BJU Press to uphold our values. The Bible and biblical principles are woven throughout each subject. I'll admit, I was a bit nervous when I started homeschooling, but I've found a wonderful online community of other BJU Press homeschool families and consultants. The Homeschool Hub also makes my job easier. I can set up our schedules and rearrange them with just a few clicks. On the dashboard, I can see each of my kids' progress, and the assignments page shows me quickly what's ready for me to check or grade. I'm glad my son's biology assignments are automatically graded. BJU Press Homeschool has given us the tools and confidence to homeschool our children. For more information, do what I did and visit the BJU Press Homeschool website or talk with your local HomeWorks consultant.
Cindy, thank you so much for being here with me today. I just feel like you're one of my new best friends.
I know. We've had so much fun like the last 6 weeks together, haven't we?
Yes. Started with your podcast, or the IAHE, the Indiana
Right.
Homeschool Association podcast. And then we
Right.
were together this past weekend at the conference, which was
know.
fabulous.
I know. And last year when we met at a different conference, it's like I got about 2 seconds with you. So now I'm just like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm so glad that we got to know each other.
Your story is so fascinating for me. So
Oh.
let everybody know what you did before you became a homeschool mom.
Well, I became a homeschool mom kind of late because I became a mom kind of late. My husband and I did not get married till our very late 30s. And so prior to that, I said my hobby was going to school. I just collected degrees before I found Scott. And so before that, I went and got my doctorate. I have a couple of master's degrees. I was a college professor and I was teaching in state schools, and I did big, small, all of those. And then kept doing that even when we started having children, when we had our 3 kids. I still was being a college professor because I was doing the traditional thing. They just went to school. They went to preschool. They went to school until I realized that wasn't the way we wanted to do it anymore.
So what did you get your PhD in, Cindy?
It is in organizational leadership. And so I deal a lot with entrepreneurs. I help people, which I know we're going to talk more about, but I help people who want to start their entrepreneurial journey. I'm now helping a lot of homeschool families and kids that want to do that entrepreneurship. So my PhD was really focused in that. And then I have an MBA and I have a master's in public administration. So it was a nonprofit management. So I kind of worked all those things together to sort of make a career.
Well, that is amazing. And I know that with all of that, you've been such a blessing to, I will tell people what IAHE
Uh,
stands for, the Indiana Association of Home
oh,
Educators. Is
yes,
that right?
yes, it is
Okay.
right. And I
and
am a volunteer with them. Yes.
Yeah, and so Cindy is doing their podcast now, and also with her background in nonprofit organizations, I know she's just a huge help to Tara Bentley, who's the executive director and the board. So that's pretty amazing how God gives you, and then brings you to people who really can benefit. So, Cindy, tell me how you went from being a college professor to being a homeschool mom.
Oh, that story is it's both like a blessing and trauma, I guess. So my husband and I, since we got married so late, we knew we wanted a family. We were going to have a baby right away, and I lost her at 13 and a half weeks, and then we couldn't get pregnant, and then I lost another baby girl at 12 and a half weeks. And so we decided that we were going to adopt, and we were going to do foster to adopt program. And we got through the program, and we were blessed with two little girls 4 days after we finished our license. They called us, and our daughters were placed with us, and they were 3 and 1 at the time that we got them. And I know this goes way back, but it kind of sets up the story for why
Right?
we
Yes. Yes.
homeschooled, why we got to where we were, because while we were in the process of finalizing their adoption, which took about a year, I got pregnant with our son. And so in 2012, we went from 0 children to 3 children by the end of the year. And we used to laugh. We're like, we're sure the IRS is going to question us because we had none and then we had 3. So it was a big year for our children. So when we had the girls and we put them, what everybody tells you, we put them in preschool, and we did all of the things that I guess the world tells us you have to do with your children. And we started noticing then that our oldest daughter especially was dealing with some stuff and was having a really hard time in school. And we tried everything we knew to do. We found a program that did part school, part homeschool. It was called University Model. So we got to bring them home for a couple of days and then do school for a couple of days. And that was our first kind of dive into any kind of homeschooling, because I never planned on homeschooling. Like, it was never something that I thought I was going to do. I know you and I have talked about that. Like, it wasn't like in my dream to be a homeschool mom, because again, I went and got all this education. I thought I would just keep working. So when our oldest was having issues, we decided to do this. And then we kept seeing some issues within the school. Then we started realizing, as all 3 of them got into school, that they just weren't being met with what they needed in the school system. So our 2 daughters have been diagnosed with what's called reactive attachment disorder. And it's a mental illness that they deal with. And so sometimes from their trauma, like, we had one that was ahead of everybody, we had one that was behind everybody, and then we had little Jackson, who was kind of ahead. And so we just decided, you know what? I think it's time to bring them home. God kind of said, bring them home to help meet where they are, like to try to meet where they are. And it was a tough road for us, because especially as somebody who had been working my entire adult life, to decide that I was going to give that up full time to homeschool, it was a big deal.
So let me back up just a second. When you talk about trauma, your daughter's oldest trauma, would that be the pre-adoption trauma that
Yes,
she
yes.
experienced?
So it is. And so I don't want to just group it in and say all kids deal with this from that adoption, but a great deal, especially if they've been in the foster care system. I mean, obviously they've had trauma, or they wouldn't have been there anyway. But this trauma could be from even pre-birth. It could be like drugs and alcohol, or it could be after they're born and neglected or abused. And so they just brought a whole lot of different things to the mix that the school system didn't understand either. And so it was kind of a constant fight of the girls sort of pitting the school against the parents, and it just became almost a dangerous situation for us.
And so that's when you brought everybody home.
We did. We decided it was time to homeschool. And even then, it was like, we're going to try this. We're going to try this and see if it works for the girls. And we did. And with the girls, it didn't work for them. I mean, they ended up having to go to a special school out of state. But then with our son, it was like, well, I love this. Like, I can't imagine not homeschooling now. Like that freedom to just chase his dreams and see what he's learning. And yeah, I thought I would never go back.
Isn't that amazing? What was it that captured your imagination or his imagination the most about homeschooling, do you think?
Well, I think, and it's so funny because little Jackson, he's 11 and he's not little. He's actually he's 11. He's 5'8" now. He's taller than me. He's like, and I call him little Jackson, but he's just, this big kid. But he always said he didn't fit in. And people used to say he just has a very old soul because, he was the kid at 5 that would wear a robe and his slippers and carry the newspaper. He just was.
And read it word for word, right?
And he would. He's reading world events and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. But we were watching him. And then even when he was young and he said he just didn't feel like he fit in the age group. And we just wanted him to get to explore the things that he loved because he did love learning, but having to go sit every day in a desk and be kind of in that box, that wasn't his kind of learning. He wanted to just explore and he likes to figure out how things work. And so for him, it's like, don't just tell me about outside. Let's go out and explore it. And let's, he collects rocks and brings them in and looks up what kind of rocks they are. And just that kind of hands-on experience. And then just the fact of just getting to be with him and see these little light bulbs go off is so fun. I got to do it as a college professor, but to get to see it with my child growing is just amazing to me.
In a way, homeschooling is more like a university education or a college education than it is a K through 12 education, just in terms of the way it's done. So you're focused on the child's interest and yes.
And I'd probably do that to him more. I'd probably teach him like a little college student because it's just what I know. So it's the idea of, okay, yeah, here's your notebooks and here, and you're here, you're going to do your note taking this way. And so, yeah, I've probably pushed him to that higher level thinking, I guess, learning.
That's pretty amazing. So when I was in Indiana, I did a keynote called Creating a Life-Giving Education for Your Child. So what do you feel like has been the most life-giving part of having Jackson at home?
Again, I think following these dreams and again, I'm an entrepreneur. My husband and I own businesses. And so Jackson has seen this as he's grown up, and this life-giving is just getting to chase some of his dreams from an early age. I mean, when he was 9, he sees us talking business and mommy and daddy kind of figuring out our stuff. And he said, I'm going to start a business. And we thought, well, okay, isn't that cute? At that moment.
Right, yes.
Isn't that sweet? And he went outside and he walked around for a while. And, he always does that. We live in a little neighborhood. And he came back and he said, everybody in our neighborhood has dogs. And we're like, well, isn't that nice? Yeah, everybody has dogs. And he said, I think I know a business. So he came in and he wrote up a flyer and he created a business on picking up dog poop in people's yards. And he said for $2, he would come pick up dog poop in your yard and dispose of it. And we just thought it was so cute. We're like, I said, make copies, send it to the neighbors, take it to the neighbors. I was shocked when half the neighbors hired him. And so, I was like, really? And nobody wanted to pay him $2. Everybody paid him more. And so just getting to see him create that And now watching him, because he's going down this acting road and he's teaching us new stuff all the time. And that's life-giving to me. Because now I'm in my
Right.
mid-50s and sometimes I feel, old and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm in touch with like stuff, but he teaches me new stuff every day.
So tell us a little bit about his creative side and how he developed an interest in acting.
We have no idea. Like we laugh. I've told you this before. So my husband is a chiropractor, and so he's very science
Right,
driven.
right.
It God first, but then he's I always want to say that because when people say it was science driven, but God first, and then he just believes God's created our body for healing. And then I'm a business person. I'm, numbers and strategic plans. And then we have this little soul that God gives us that I always say God's sense of humor is just mighty because like Jackson just has this thing since he was very young. He would watch movies and TV shows and he would say, I want to do that. When he would see a kid up on screen, I want to do that. And I'm like, oh, again, you kind of go, oh, yeah, okay, that's, And then we got him in like a local community theater. We're like, well, let's see, if this is just a passing phase. It wasn't. It wasn't a passing phase. And it's been this like creative thing that we see, not just with acting, but like he draws and he does music. And my husband and I are constantly like, well, where did he get that? He picked up a harmonica one day, and by like the end of the day, he was playing songs on it. And my husband and I are like, where'd that come from? Because we don't have a lick of that kind of creativity.
It is so interesting because we have a daughter who was very involved in community theater. We didn't have homeschool groups at the time,
Mhm.
co-ops where you could, and I can remember we took her to a little play. Well, it wasn't a little play, but we took her to a play. And it was kind of a variety show. It was appropriate for her age as a 3 or 4-year-old because she loved singing and dance. And I remember we took Lizzie to this play and she sat there like this the whole time. And that was not who she was. I said, Lizzie, what is wrong with you? She said, I keep seeing these little kids up there. I can do that.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
am I sitting here? She,
Yeah, why am I not on stage? Like, this is
yes.
crazy.
And so then after that, she was, because it was what she wanted. She kept saying, how can I do that? And so she was,
Right,
she was Annie. She had a couple of really neat roles that she enjoyed, that we enjoyed, but none of
right.
us had ever done any theater. So I'm right there with you
Oh, the
on the
creativity.
things that your kids do that you thought, where did that come from? So
Right.
once you realized Jackson really had a thing for acting, what did y'all do?
Well, I do what I do. I mean, I'm a professor. I start researching because I always know what I don't know. I guess is, that
Mhm.
saying of
Yes.
I knew that I had no clue. I'm like, well, I think you need like classes and I think you need agents and I think you need, all these things and I don't know how to do this. And so I started researching and figuring out kind of like the next steps. And we are blessed in that we always laugh. We live in the middle of cornfields in Indiana, like in the middle of nowhere. But we are literally like 3 hours from so many places, and one being Chicago. And I researched and found this great acting school in Chicago. And, we start talking about it, and it's like, well, we'll have him apply, see if he gets in. That's first step, see if he gets in. Well, he got in. And then we thought, okay, but we're going to be driving to Chicago every Saturday for 10 weeks to do this. And my husband and I were like, we looked at it as the people who do travel sports and go all over. We don't do
Right.
travel
That's
sports.
right.
So,
That's right.
we're like,
So
we don't
you
do
do
that. So
travel acting. Yeah.
we do travel acting.
That's
And then I do like, and I used to embarrass my husband more because he's very introverted and I'm not. But now we go to this acting school every Saturday. And at some point during his class, we'll be sitting in the waiting room, either at the beginning or the end. And there's all these other actors in there talking and having these conversations. And so I'm like, well, you're having a public conversation, so I'm going to just break in and ask. so, so my husband Scott has to sit there as I say, excuse me, I know you're having a conversation, but what does that mean? Like when you talk about this or this. And so I've just started investigating and sharing. I think networking, even like when you have these dreams, I put it out there on social media because I have friends all over the country. And I had a friend that knew a working actor that connected them, and they've been doing Zoom calls together to prep him. So yeah, I think, the Lord just opens doors that, you just kind of have to investigate. And so I've been having fun learning the next steps.
I think one thing you say is something we talk about a lot, and that is you have to become students of your children. And it's really one of the greatest joys, I think, of homeschooling is really spending time figuring out, what each child's learning style is, what makes them tick. Not only what
Right.
motivates them, but what demotivates them.
Right.
Their strengths and passions, and you can do that when you homeschool.
Oh,
There's not a classroom teacher in the world who can do that because you cannot do that with 20 kids. And you know that because you taught.
I did. And you can't do that. And you can't, I always tell him, like, when we're doing stuff, because we'll do evaluations just to kind of see, like, are you picking up concepts? But I tell him all the time, because he'll say, are we having a test? I'm like, we don't do tests. Like, tests don't exist in our house, but we do just kind of evaluations. Let's see where we are. And just this morning, we were doing some with math, and he gets very hard on himself. And I'm sorry, mommy, that I don't know this math. And I'm like, buddy, it's okay. As long as you do know some basic, this might not be your thing, but this acting is. And I'm like, I just want you to know if you're getting paid appropriately when you're doing your acting. So, if you can add your money columns, we're good. But just making them feel like it's okay, that they don't have to be judged on a thing. And this week, we're a week away from the eclipse, which Indiana is in the major show area for this eclipse.
Right.
And I'm able to just stop other things that we're doing. And I found a mini unit on the eclipse, and we just put it in for this week. And I like just being able to kind of see where things take us.
That really is an exciting part of homeschooling to me. You can take what's happening in the world and use it in your home as a teaching and a learning time.
Right.
It's so appropriate. I do remember my mother. We have a homeschool co-op here, and one of the little girls in our church, not little girl, she's probably 10 or 12, called us. And her assignment was to talk to people who were alive when JFK was assassinated and
Oh,
find out their reactions. So it was really fun for us to do that, interviewing with her and share our experiences as 9-year-olds, what it was like when the
right.
president was assassinated. But I just remember my mother was a public school teacher, but she would always, this was when television sets were in the classroom was a new concept, but when there was a space launch or a president died or was elected, she would take the television to school, and I would get to sit in her class sometimes, and we would just sit and watch. But incorporating current events, scientific events, all of those things into your homeschool really connects our children with the world they live in and gives them, I think, a meaningful, relevant education.
And it makes them critical thinkers. And I
Yes.
said that I started seeing after 25 years of being a college professor, I saw those skills going down, like those critical thinking skills. And
Interesting,
I
Cindy.
would tell, usually my first assignment in a basic business class, I would say, I want you to find something business that happened this week, and I want a 1-page paper on what you thought about it. Like, that was all I asked. Like, what did you think about it? And I would have people cry about this assignment. Well, like, what are you looking for? And what is this going to be on the test? And what is about this? And I'm like, I just want to know what you think in 1 page in like a very succinct way. And I had people that wouldn't turn it in because it was almost too much for them.
Interesting. And so you have actually seen that decline
I have
as
seen
you've
that
been
decline.
teaching as a college professor.
I have seen that, yes.
So, for those of us who have not had the benefit of teaching or being in the college classroom like you, how can we help our children develop those critical thinking skills?
Well, I think like I just said, I mean, ask them what they think. I mean, first just get them to have those thoughts. It's like we can't tell somebody if their thought is right or wrong. I mean, it's just like, let's hear what you think. And then we can teach them to back it up with facts or how to search for relevant facts. So I think that's the first thing is just when we're doing assignments or doing things in our homeschool to not necessarily have those right and wrong things. Just have those things where it's like, tell me what you think. Give me your insights. What have we learned about? Make them connect the dots on some things. Like, what have we learned in homeschool that applies to this situation? So push them there.
I just this what you're saying about critical thinking is so critical. I want to take I want to take just a minute to thank the sponsor of the Zan Tyler podcast, BJU Press Homeschool, for their curriculum that really does teach critical thinking skills, whether it's about how do you develop a biblical worldview in your children, or how do you approach a piece of literature, or how do you decide what you think about what's happening in the world. I
Absolutely.
know that I did want to take a minute to thank them
Oh,
for
no. Yeah.
developing a curriculum that focuses like that on critical thinking
That
skills.
does that. I mean, we do that now with even when Jackson does Bible study or when he's reading the
Mm.
Bible, we encourage him to ask the questions and to think through things. And sometimes we have to look at him and say, buddy, we don't know the answer here, but you have great questions. You have great insights into that. We have to provide our kids with this idea of lifelong learning. I know,
Absolutely,
you're still
absolutely.
learning. You're still learning. I'm still learning. I think
That's
it's
right.
just it's a constant thing that we need to encourage them that we're not saying when you finish your homeschool, you're done educating yourself. It's just the beginning.
One of my friends, Deb Bell, had her master's degree as she was homeschooling her 4 kids. But after her kids graduated from her homeschool, she went back and got her PhD in educational psychology. And
Mm,
one of the things she studied was motivation. And she
yes.
learned that the longer that kids are in an institutional school, the less they're motivated academically.
Yes.
The longer they're in the homeschool, the more they are motivated academically, which I just found fascinating. But one thing she talked about a lot was the ability to ask questions. And I wanted to focus on this because I don't want to lose the importance of what you said. I think it's critically important is that in most traditional classrooms, the teacher asks the question. Deb said, we want to get to the point in our homeschooling where the kids are asking the
Yes.
questions. And I think that homeschooling is particularly made for that. So when your kids are asking questions, Cindy, we shouldn't ignore them. We should
No.
find out what's happening in them where these questions on a particular topic are bubbling up and take it seriously, and let's find
Yes.
the answers together.
Right. And I have friends who I will hear them say, my child's driving me crazy. They're just asking question after question. And I'm like, oh my goodness, don't squash that. I know I get exhausted too. By 8 o'clock at night, I'm thinking, oh, if I get one more question, I'm like, I'm not sure I can handle it. But it's the idea of I try to make sure of, even if I'm tired, it's like, you know what, sweetie? Mommy's really tired right now. Like, can we jot that down and, come to that tomorrow? But I never tell him that his questions are reasonable or I don't want any more questions because that's where they learn. It's funny that you said your friend went and got a PhD. I have friends all the time. They're like, well, don't you hate that you've kind of wasted your PhD? I get that question all the time. Like, don't you feel like you're wasting your PhD? And I'm like, really? Like, I'm wasting my education? I think it taught me to question and dig and research. And Jackson's become a little me and he will research anything. And so I think that's a great skill to have.
Absolutely. I remember Ben Carson spoke at my oldest son's college graduation at
Wow.
USC. And I remember him saying, no information is wasted. No knowledge is wasted. And whatever God gives you, whether it's random or through training for a PhD program, he is going to use in your life in a specific way. And Cindy, I just look at what a blessing you are to the homeschooling world. We're all running nonprofit organizations. And to,
Absolutely.
and to have somebody like you whose academic background and practical background is in that, I mean, that's a gift to me to know that I
Yeah.
can pick up the phone and call you. I won't abuse that, but that's, I'm thinking, I am so happy you have that knowledge. I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah. Well, I know it, and I was talking to Tara Bentley, who's our executive director, just this morning, and we were talking about our fundraising efforts, and that was my background. And so I feel blessed that I'm able to be a part of that, because it is definitely, I said this at the conference it was the day you were speaking, actually, that when I told people we want to make sure that our homeschooling freedoms are here 40 years from now and 80 years from now, and we're building continually on the things that people like you did, you and your family. We're just building on that foundation.
Thanks for joining us for episode 1 in this 2-part series. I hope you have been encouraged and inspired by the love of learning you can foster in your children when you homeschool them. You can find all about Cindy at her website, cindybriggsphd.com. And as always, you can find me at zantyler.com and on social media. I pray that God continues to bless you and your family. Until next time, bye.